November ballot, as you know, it would make possession of an ounce of marijuana legal for adults, but opponents say it would open a Pandora's box of trouble.
It will wreak havoc if it's passed. This war on drugs is a total and complete failure.
One side says legalizing pot would increase crime and make a gateway drug even more available.
I picked up marijuana and I never looked back until it was too late.
The other side says regulating pot would increase tax revenues and make it less available to kids.
It's easier for them to get marijuana today than it is alcohol.
Both candidates for governor, both candidates for senator, and just about every police organization is against Prop 19. But a recent poll shows voters are for it, 49 to 42.
I think it's more important to take it out of the drug dealers' hands.
So is Prop 19 good or bad for California? Joining us to discuss that is LA County Sheriff Lee Baca, who's a vocal opponent of legalizing marijuana. Also, now I've talked to both of you back in our green room, and two issues that you have in common: money and crime. But you both have different perspectives on what would happen if Prop 19 passed. Let's start with you, Sheriff Baca. What is your worst case scenario?
Worst case scenario is simple. When you add it all up, the costs are much higher than it's worth. First of all, the costliness of the whole issue is not a good thing, because the profitability idea with healthcare becomes even more troubling to me. Addictiveness is the big issue. Marijuana is a gateway drug to cocaine, to also methamphetamine and heroin. It's clear that people who take marijuana are doing this for some purpose, and the purpose cannot be disguised by the auspices of medicinal purposes, unless you're an HIV patient, have glaucoma or cancer. But everyone else is operating on the premise somehow that marijuana is medicine. It is not. It is not a health food. It is addictive. It does cause people to become health dependent when they get older. And short-term memory loss, to me, is a big issue. So I'm fighting for life, and I believe that healthy life is more important than addictive life.
We're going to bring the judge in here in just a second, but Sheriff Baca, you also mentioned that you feel like when people use or abuse marijuana, the crime rate may go up, because you believe that it lowers inhibitions and then that leads to more crime, true?
Yes. I have experience with criminals in our county jail, and I have the large recovery center for drug-addicted people and purpose. And the whole point about that is that you cannot separate addictive behavior from crime. It will occur in driving, it will occur in relationships at home, it will occur with domestic violence, it will occur on the street, it will occur on a casual circumstance when people start to argue, and their addictiveness, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or any other thing, will start to play into what they do to each other abusively.
All right, Judge Gray, weigh in here.
Well, thank you. You know, the marijuana is here, and the vast majority of people that use marijuana use it responsibly. The sheriff will say, and I agree with him, that particularly for young people whose bodies are developing, it's not a good idea. It will cause some harms, but those harms are going to be caused regardless of whether Proposition 19 passes or not. But at least when it passes, the money, instead of going to fuel juvenile gangs all around Los Angeles, California, and the country, at least then that money will go to the city of Glendale or Burbank or Los Angeles, etc. The money is really, really important. And of course now it's going to the Mexican drug cartels as well. So the sheriff doesn't talk about the money problems that the marijuana money brings. And by the way, that whole stepping stone theory has been completely exploded. 85% of all of the people that have ever used marijuana don't go on to use any other drugs. Yes, the ones that do go on to use methamphetamine or cocaine or whatever probably use marijuana along the way, but before that they used cigarettes, before that they used alcohol. You can trace it back to Lipton iced tea or mother's milk if you want to. That simply has been exploded.
So Judge Gray, you're suggesting, back to a point that you made earlier, that perhaps you would undercut, Prop 19 would undercut the juvenile gang problem thanks to legalizing marijuana. That's what you were saying, correct?
Yes, it will in fact take the money away from the MS-13 gang or whatever, and will channel that to the cities. And
Okay,
you know,
a
if the
response.
marijuana is going to be sold anyway, which it will be, of course, and even when they closed down a bunch of these dispensaries in Los Angeles, that did not reduce the amount of marijuana sold. It just pushed it underground and it went into the illegal hands.
Well, that must sound pretty appealing to you, Sheriff Baca, the idea that these juvenile gangs, they would have a little less money to throw around?
Well,
And illegal activity?
Let's talk about the money charged currently illegally by some of these dispensaries. $30 for a quarter of an ounce, $60 for half an ounce, $120 for a full ounce. This is outrageous in an economic downturn, and it's not nutritional money. It's not money that's going to give you a better health. It's money to satisfy your addiction or to satisfy your stresses.
You might be making a point that Judge Gray would say goes to supporting Prop 19 because the prices might become more regulated and actually come down. Wasn't that your point to
Well,
me, Judge
actually,
Gray?
what my point
I'm
really
sure.
is this, excuse me, my point is simply this. The healthcare industry knows all too well what addictive personalities cost America in terms of healthcare costs. And all we're leading to with this legalizing marijuana is more people eventually going for healthcare needs that the rest of the country is going to have to pay for it. Only less than 8% of the people are frequent marijuana users. This initiative will not pass because those that don't use marijuana or any other kind of drugs are in the larger number, and it'll go down to defeat.
Well, it's interesting. We're going to take a listen to what one person commented about this. California's beer and beverage distributors, they say that under Prop 19, big rig operators could not be tested for marijuana, allowing drivers to smoke pot. And then they said, quote, operate hundreds of trucks and trailers on California highways every day, exposing the public to potential harm.
There's a history of alcohol companies putting money against propositions such as ours. And frankly, it could be that they're concerned for the competition.
I'm afraid we heard it, but we didn't actually see it. And Judge Gray, I want to bring you in here because you've read the law very carefully. Does it indeed allow for the operation of these trucks and trailers on California highways while being intoxicated?
Absolutely and certainly not. You know, this basically shows the desperation that a lot of people are talking about that are opposing Prop 19. No, it doesn't affect the workplace. The same rules will be applied. No, it expressly does not reduce the driving under the influence laws, but it does actually increase and tighten the penalties for people furnishing these drugs, marijuana, to young people under the age of 21. So that's just a desperate measure, and it's downright silly. It's not worth the discussion.
Well, I beg to differ. It is worth the discussion because many employers are vaguely referred to in this initiative and will ultimately have to have workplace set aside for marijuana smokers along with the normal smokers. The point is that this law is a jumbled mess, and Californians who are looking at this closely will see that the confusion and the messiness of this initiative dictates that it not be passed.
But in any shape or form, Sheriff Baca, you would be against. It's not, you don't take issue with the way this law, well, you take issue with the way the law is written or the proposal is written, but on top of that, you would see in no way, shape, or form would you agree to legalization.
That's correct. I think the human mind is sacred, quite frankly. I think it belongs in another place. I think people need to work better at solving their problems. I understand the stresses of life. I've dealt with the stresses of life. I think that there's other ways to solve these problems. Marijuana in of itself, other than HIV, glaucoma, and cancer, has no probative medical value.
Well, meantime, the governor today reduced the criminality of marijuana from a misdemeanor to a civil infraction. Judge Gray, does this basically make Prop 19 sort of moot?
No, I think it really doesn't affect 19 at all, but it certainly was a realistic thing for the governor to do. But making people that are smoking marijuana automatic criminals, regardless of which way it is silly. Most of them do it responsibly, hold people accountable for their actions, just like with me. I do drink alcohol. I've never used any other illicit substance, but that's the key. And why should people that are buying marijuana have to associate with gangsters or people that will actually have a vested interest in selling them methamphetamines or cocaine also? Bring it under the law. The cities can do this. The cities are fully capable of doing this. They can learn from each other. One of the beauties of Proposition 19 is that it will bring these things under the law for those cities that choose to be a part of this. That's another beauty.
All right.
Vote in favor of Prop 19. It's a really pretty good measure.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for this discussion.
You're welcome.
California legislators are expected to